Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to continue with our week of gloom and doom. And today we're going to be talking about fires and droughts. So this is in your Tuesday the 20th folder. And let's start with our notes. So it has been quite a year for... Oh, okay. Hold on, guys. Here at Jake has been kind enough to let me know that I am not sharing my slide with y'all. It was fine on mine, though. So, welcome to Tuesday the 20th. Continuing to talk about catastrophic events. And remember, the thing we want to keep in mind is, yeah, we know these catastrophic events happen. We want to keep in mind what it's doing to the ecosystem. So yesterday, we saw flooding. Hurricanes, those are obviously, tsunamis going to disturb ecosystems. It may very well disable them for some time being. But if there is soil, the ecosystem can come back. It's not going to be exactly the same as it was, but plants are going to come back. Then the animals will come back, and eventually, and it may take 10 years, it may take 100 years or 1,000 years to come back. But as long as there's soil, it can come back because the plants are able to reestablish themselves. And as the foundation of the energy pyramid, the foundation of the, the feeding cycle, if there's plants, then animals will come. But if there's soil, even a big old giant tsunami is gonna wash away some of it. But obviously you saw some of it was still left on the ground. And that's true for flooding and hurricanes as well. So reminder, no school on Friday. Enjoy your day. And we said the word catastrophic means involving or causing sudden great damage or suffering. And this is the teak that says it wants you just to understand how those catastrophic events impact the ecosystem. And as I said, it may temporarily totally dismantle an ecosystem. The animals that are able to escape, they escape. Many animals are not able to escape the sudden surge of water, and they're going to drown too, just like humans. Those that are able to survive, their homes are probably, and their food is probably destroyed. So if they're able to, birds in the way have it easy, they're able to quickly leave an area and go to another. But if you're a larger animal like a deer, well, you still need to, you're going to be very obvious, to people, hunters or whatever, the danger of cars as you try to move from wherever this catastrophic event is happening to another place. The other thing is we're kind of reviewing 6.12e, which you have to know what things are biotic and abiotic. And in what we covered yesterday, the things that are biotic, the living things, are the plants and animals. The abiotic factors from yesterday were rain, that's not a living thing. Wind, that's not a living thing. The soil, not living. The rocks, not living. Okay? Those were the abiotic parts of an ecosystem, which just about every ecosystem has, but they're non-living, but we need them. We can't live without the oxygen, without the water. So during a catastrophic event, and I did add this one in because I forgot yesterday, sometimes what happens is just too hot. So we're going to see that definitely today in forest fires and droughts. So forest fires. So most forest fires, no surprise, is caused by humans. Usually they go camping and they don't shut the fire off well, or embers, fly off the fire and into the brush that's dry. Someone throws a cigarette. How many times haven't you driven down the highway, even in your young age, and seen that there's a fire on the side of the highway, and it's usually caused by someone who was smoking a cigarette and threw that cigarette butt and it still had fire on it, and it starts burning the fire. Okay? But they can happen naturally as well. Lightning can strike and start a fire. On rare occasions, when there's volcanoes, as it's shooting out, fiery stones or magma that is on fire, that can start a fire as well. But for the most part, you can see it is humans that do that. And sometimes it's just on purpose. That's called arson.
So the way that wildfires start are basically human ignitions and then natural ignitions. Humans being lighting the fire on purpose, or they can do it by accident, throwing a cigarette butt out, or by leaving a campfire that still has hot coals in it. And then naturally, the most common natural form of ignition is lightning. And then we have just biomass igniting spontaneously, which is not very frequent, but it can happen. Land managers use fire to prevent wildfires, which seems kind of contradictory, but what they're doing is they're burning off the excess fuel on the landscape. When a wildfire is coming up, the wind is pushing it, it's moving fast, and then it comes up on an area where we had a prescribed fire within the past year, maybe 2 years. It comes up on that area, and all of a sudden the fuel is not there.
So what they're doing is that they are pre-burning the grass. They pick out an area and they burn all this dead grass that's on the ground already. So if there is a wildfire, as he's saying, the fire gets there, well, there's nothing to continue it because it's already been burnt. So it's one way that they control fires is by pre-burning an area and getting rid. And the fuel he's talking about is just the dead grass, leaves, twigs that are on the forest floor. So if they pre-burn them controlled, then when the fire comes, then it stops there because there's nothing for it to keep burning, to keep moving forward.
And it just dies down. There's good fires and there's bad fires. The wildfires being bad because they can cause a lot of unwanted damage. Control fires being good because they remove hazardous fuels and have other ecological benefits associated with them. Well, obviously, fires have a major effect on the environment, depending upon the intensity of the fire. It burns biomass, burns up fuels that are found on the ground or in the forest. A lot of smoke comes.
So the burning biomass that he was saying, that's burning leaves, twigs, kind of nature-made litter that's on the floor.
Off a fire. So if you think about it, when fires are burning, the chemical reaction is pretty much just the opposite of photosynthesis. So instead of collecting the sun's energy and putting it into making biomass, it's combining the fuels with oxygen and releasing the sun's energy out into the environment. And it generates a lot of smoke. There's some very positive effects on it also. So many plants and some ecosystems and even animals and even insects, they have adapted to living with fire. And several cases, they'll only regenerate or maintain themselves if there's fires coming into the ecosystem. So the only thing...
So what he means there is there's actually some plants that need fire. There's some plants that their seeds are in like a real hard shell, and they actually need fire to burn that shell so then the seed can escape out. So some some type of trees depend on fire burning some of the outside shell of their seeds to release the inside seed, so the plant can make some more of it. And it sounds like there's some insects that do the same thing.
We really have control over is the fuel. People have been using fire to reduce the vegetation for eons. So we have what we call the fire triangle is three elements necessary for fire. If you take away any side of the triangle, you can't have fire. So that's fuel is one of the sides of the triangle. The other one is oxygen, and the third one is heat. Removing the fuel removes the possibility of fire. I've been thinking a lot about the fires in California, and I look at the pictures of it, of what's going on, and what I see, a lot of times, I see a lot of remnants of vegetation. And when things get dry, they burn, and if the vegetation is close to the house, it's just providing fuels for the fires to move through and catch the houses. Houses are...
So guys, so one thing why the fires were so bad in California a couple of years ago is that California had been going through a drought. So they had a drought. Let me back up. They actually had a lot of rain. They had a lot of rain, so they had a lot of trees and brush and all kinds of stuff growing. Then they had a drought. And all that stuff that grew, the grasses, the brush, the small bushes, they died because then they were in a drought. So you had rain that helped make all this vegetation, or as he calls it, biomass. Then you had a drought that killed it all, and it was all just dried firewood waiting for a fire. And that's why the fires were so bad, because we had a period of heavy rains that everything grew terrific. Then a period of years of drought where everything dried up. And then we had the introduction of fire, which took advantage of burning all that stuff that had dried up.
For fuel also. There's a whole program that the Forest Service is across the country put on. It's called Fire-Wise Communities. And what that is it's getting a community together to organize, to make their homes more fireproof. And by fireproof, I mean the fire can't get up to their house. The wildfire can't get to a house that has been gone through the Fire-Wise community process. The wildfires are getting more intense within the United States for several factors. Probably the biggest of these factors are drought conditions. The more drought you have over a longer time period, the lesser the moisture content, the more the fires are going to ignite. North Carolina has a higher percent of the land than any other state which is in the wildland urban interface. So it's categorized as people living in the forest. But those houses, unless you start doing fuel removal around the houses, those houses are just big piles of fuel ready to burn.
So what they're suggesting is that when people build their houses, or even their houses already built, is that instead of planting stuff maybe right up to the house or whatever, that you have an area around your house that's more like cement or rocks or pebbles that won't catch fire right up to your house. But instead, maybe 100 feet perimeter around your house, there may be grass, but there's not all kinds of other vegetation that leads the fire right to your house as well.
In the right conditions, wildfires are very much possible in North Carolina, and actually we have a lot of wildfires every year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whoever you are, for that information. Someone from the College of Resources. So I added this one too, because as you know, last year, the wildfires in Australia were horrific. They estimate more than 1 million animals died in those fires.
There have always been wildfires. But nothing like this. In 2020, Australia went up in flames. The scale and intensity signified an undeniable new phase in the climate crisis.
What we see in Australia now is something that's likely to be playing out all over the world for many, many years to come.
For Australia's wildlife, it was catastrophic.
Poor wildlife, right? We lost whole animal cultures. It's pretty confronting.
I think it hurts just a little bit more because we've just missed them by this much. They've only just died.
The fires come through and have their immediate impact, and it's catastrophic. But even for those animals that do survive, the natives, the real challenge just begins.
In the year after the wildfires, we assess the toll, chart the recovery, and the healing of the wild.
Just going to check if there's an egg in here. This cargo is very precious.
You got some?
Yeah. Little girl.
Look at them. I know. Australia has been facing the loss of its natural places for a very long time. The fires should act as a big wake-up call.
It's going to take time, and if we can support these animals through this time, good things will happen.
So I don't know if you remember seeing shots where there'd be little koalas like begging
There have
for
always been wildfires.
water or taking water from the firefighters and stuff. So drought is a lack of precipitation. Water does not fall where ordinarily it might. There are some areas that go through periods of drought, which recorded in our Earth history, just because. And those are just everything really runs in cycles on our planet. And they're caused by weather patterns that change the weather to hotter, drier, and deforestation, where we've removed plants, mostly forests, that used to be in a certain area. So climate change and urbanization, where we're building homes and stuff where they're not used to be, is also causing drought.
Stanford University.
We're experiencing very rare conditions in California right now. The calendar year of 2013 was the driest on record. We're observing these drought conditions in real time.
The ridiculously resilient ridge is this region of highly persistent high pressure over the northeastern Pacific Ocean that has been there more often than not over really this entire winter season so far and for the latter half of the previous winter. This graphic is depicting the broad region of unusually high pressure and geopotential heights over the northern Pacific Ocean that occurred during the calendar year 2013. You can see in this graphic how this region of persistent ridging in the Gulf of Alaska has redirected the storm track to the north. So the storms that would typically move in on the jet stream in the Pacific Ocean into California have been redirected into Alaska and to British Columbia.
So the real question now is what's going to happen through the rest of the spring, because in California and more broadly in the western United States, we really rely on snowpack as a natural reservoir.
This region of persistent ridging has definitely weakened over the eastern Pacific. It's certainly not as prominent as it was in January and for much of the fall. And what that means is that there have been a couple of storm systems that have sort of made it through this resilient ridge and actually brought some precipitation to California. But it's important to keep in mind that across most of Northern California, the existing precipitation deficits as a result of this 13 or 14 month dry spell are so large that we would need essentially on the order of anywhere from 10 to 20 major storms, truly heavy precipitation events to bring us back to where we should be. It could happen. We could receive a significant amount of precipitation between now and the end of March, but we would need to receive a lot more to improve the drought conditions in California.
All right. So, yeah, California's been suffering with droughts, and it's unfortunate because it's one of the states that produces most, grapes for wine and grapes for eating, strawberries, but there's huge areas that you drive through are just humongous farms. They're one of the places that feeds America. Alrighty, so that is the end of our information about droughts and fires. As you can see, definitely the ecosystems are affected. There was another video I wanted to show you. I'll bring it tomorrow about how Australia is coming back because there was soil and it was able to come back. So you have your fire assignment, you have your exit question, and some of you still have not taken Friday's test. You need to go do it. The notes are attached to the Friday assignment for you to be able to answer the questions. Alrighty, that's all I have. Have a good day. Bye, guys.